Hello everyone! Today I'm going to talk about Genshin Impact, more specifically my favorite region, Fontaine. As with any Genshin video, I'm going to give a disclaimer. I do not endorse Genshin or Hoyoverse in any way. I am not promoting them. I haven't spent any money since Inazuma on merch or in-game currency. I'm making this more as a I watched a bad movie so you don't have to sort of way. Personally, I like the story and gameplay. What I'm referencing is their outright mishandling of cultures they so obviously are trying to reference, and their years upon years of colorism regarding the playable cast and even NPCs. Natlin has brought this controversy up again, however, I'd say it's been an issue since Inazuma, so please don't go and support this company. I've just been playing for 4 years of my life and it's my comfort game, so on to the video. Please watch other people's discussions on this topic to fully inform yourself from the people who are being affected. And obviously, spoiler warnings. I thought Inazuma would be my favorite region since I've studied Japanese culture for most of my life. I find the Edo period one of the most fascinating in history. However, it somehow turned out to be my least favorite by a long shot. Now, don't get me wrong. The Asian countries MiHoYo represented with the regions are more accurately represented, due to Hoyo being based in China. However, since I knew more about the Inazuman references, it was spitting in my face every time I turned around. I personally hated the story, which was probably just my opinion. I can't comment on writing prowess, and if you don't like Raiden's design, her personality is the most unlikable of the 4 Archons in my opinion. I'm excluding Melvika and Farina because opinions on their personalities is very controversial, and it's a you love them or you hate them ordeal. So after that absolute tragedy of disappointment, when I got to Fontaine, I didn't expect much. As I rode the aqua bus, however, I was almost brought to tears. It was so beautiful. Genshin is a game you have to play almost every day to keep up with events and premium currency. There's been a lot of times I was close to or wanting to quit. Then they just show the most beautiful cutscene I have ever seen or absolutely stunning open world areas. You get to explore the water this time and it's full of them. There's tons of sunken ships and castles. Then we find out that this region's ordeal is that the trials are held publicly in a court akin to a theater. My whole life flashed before my eyes because this is it. This is my favorite region. Like I briefly mentioned in my intro video, Danganronpa was one of my favorite games in my teens, and things in that realm like Your Turn to Die. I find investigative murder mystery type games the most interesting. We then see Linny and Lynette, which I fell to the floor and kissed the ground they walked on. Fontaine is my favorite by far costume design-wise. The dresses, etc. are obviously influenced by European Rococo era, which influenced Lolita, you know, if your brain immediately went to Lolita. But they mixed it with steampunk and PU leather, which I swear to God has been my top 2 favorite design styles since ever. We then meet the god and she tries to arrest us for Paimon, in her words, being a flying object, which you can't have on the first 3 days of the month or some shit. I'm sorry, what? We also meet Child again, the Fatui Harbinger, which is like our bad guys that are constantly being shown aren't pure evil, and that our gods aren't so nice either. He says he has business here and wants us to hold on to his vision since it's shut off for some reason, which is basically everyone's elemental powers. We find out the issue plaguing this land the traveler has to fix is the rising sea, and it may just one day drown everyone, so our twins are helping out, handing out dry bags with unlimited capacity. And they are to perform magic at the theater, so we need to help them with that and go watch it. We meet Neuvillette, who's the one and only judge apparently, besides the mechanism that does the final judging, called the Oratrice. He is second in command. The god signs stuff, but he takes care of Farina, the god's name by the way, and performs trials. But he's here to watch the show with us. During the show, Linny the brother does a box trick, where he switches boxes with a audience member. A tank of water falls on the box the audience member is in, and she disappears. It should have killed her, but there's no body to be found. Linny is accused of killing the audience member by Farina, so we get our first investigation sequence. We become Linny's defendant against Farina. During the trial, Farina reveals the twins are part of the House of the Hearth, which is a Fatui-ran orphanage. Remember our bad guys? We then take them to the side and they admit being part of the Fatui, but that they are not malicious and they are on the Saving the World team. The flood has been predicted to come soon, so we are like, fine, I guess, we'll defend you. What really happened is, turns out there's a special type of water with seemingly abyssal energy. The abyss is like actual bad guys' ecological hazardous force. Yeah, well, in the deep, deep sea is a spring of water that will dissolve Fontainians. NPC Astu tried to pour it on our audience member girl, and she switched places with him in the box where he died. Linny is found not guilty, and we meet Navia, a awesome character. She is like a good mobster type character, And apparently she's been investigating a case of missing girls who seem to have just disappeared. Wink wink. Maybe it has something to do with the case we just solved. While we are investigating for her, we go to the fountain outside the theater. We've been hearing voices come from it, and we pass out, like always, and see an oceanid telling us to go look for her lover, Vache. Oceanids are like water spirits. We then wake up to the guard mechs battling on top of us. Apparently we hit the ground snoozing, and these guards tried to hurt us, but Navia, her men, and a new girl named Chlorine fought them all. The second there's no danger, however, she leaves. And we have a case to solve. We find out for some reason Child, our Fatui buddy, is actually being accused of the case we are trying to solve, and the absolute idiot is absolutely fine with it because he might have a chance to fight Chlorinde. See, if someone is guilty in a trial, they can either serve time or duel for their honor. Chlorinde is the current duelist, and if there's one thing Child likes to do, it's fighting. Navia runs in to stall the trial because we have a lead on an important NPC character no one cares about, while we storm his hideout and find enough evidence against his ass and run to Navia. Same guy who doesn't matter is Vache. Everyone thinks he's guilty, but we still need to wait for the judgment of the Oratrice. Luckily he is found guilty, but even more puzzling, Child still needs to wait for his judgment, in which he is found guilty somehow. Child then tries to fight, as always, and Neuve absolutely throws him to the ground. Besides literal gods, Child has always been second strongest lore-wise, and Neuve just made fun of him with how quickly he hit the dirt. Vache or whatever wants to go see his lover, the Oceanid, and we find out the water doesn't just kill them, it turns them into ocean spirits. So, his lover, quote-unquote, is actually a mixture of all the girls he killed. They even end up killing him. We then get a Q&A like they do at the end of Archon quests. However, this time it is neuvillette, which is foreshadowing if I've ever seen one. This whole time Farina has acted spoiled, but it's obvious it's an act, and she's very wordy. I personally think it's fun for Genshin to diversify the personalities a little more, but I can see why people disliked her at this point. Now, on to Act 3. We talked to Neuve, and apparently Farina was propositioned to have lunch with the head of the twins' house. We find out she's a Fatui Harbinger, so on the same level as Child. After Neuve's worries are overruled, the meeting takes place. In the Nave, as she is called, just wants Child out of jail and out of the region, or at least to see him. Cut back to current time, and Neuve is talking about how he disagrees with the Oratrice and wants us to go into the prison and help him escape. We then meet Rio. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. My very slight lisp makes it impossible for me to pronounce it for some reason. Anyway, Caked Up Man introduces us to Sigewinne, head nurse of the prison, who is half Melazine. Everyone was joking about who screwed a Melazine before a story quest came out. Turns out we have to be an actual prisoner, like eat in the cafeteria and do prison jobs for a while, until we find the twins who were sent here for the same reason. But apparently Child is nowhere to be found. He must have already escaped, so now we are just figuring out how he got out. We find a guy who will give us more information if we make more of the specific prison currency called coupons. So we work some more. I swear this section made you feel like you're literally working in a prison. It was so boring, and you had to make choices whether to explore and find answers or work and manage a currency. So I was also scared of making the wrong choice every single time. The only thing interesting was we had a dream of Child while he was here, which didn't help much at all. The tips he gives us is Sigewinne spies on the workers and gives them a restorative meal, which is gross because she's not human, it has like lizards in it. And there's a new Fanta flavor because Rio hates Fanta or something. And finally, we find Child's friends who show us a tunnel he was last seen going into. The tunnel leads straight to tons of water, and apparently MC, who's been diving to the bottom of the ocean for 4 patches, isn't good enough of a diver. So we asked the twins to make their little brother. I haven't mentioned yet because he is too shy to get one plot point. He's a diver who lives at the orphanage, and he is not blood to the twins, but they treat him as such. That's all you need to know in the meantime. Lenny wants us to help the twins investigate their own secret objective. And as it turns out, Rio was onto the twins' investigation all along, locked the diving kid underwater where he could literally not be alive anymore, and kidnapped Lynette, the sister. He did all of this just to piss off the Knave enough by messing with their kids to get an audience with her. Rio agrees to let them go if we can reveal our investigation efforts from the tips we got, so like Sigewinne messing with the lunches scandal. So Lenny literally charges at Rio to attack him, and Sigewinne shoots him. I'm flipping out, but no, it was just a trank dart. Thank the holiness of Rio's butt. But Chlorine shows up, kid over one shoulder. Apparently they didn't even want to hurt him, but he's passed out because the abyssal kill people water to normal water ratio is rising. So not only is Kid deathly ill, the prophecy of Fontaine being flooded is about to come true. Rio then takes us to the Forbidden Zone, which is apparently a zone that's been holding the deadly water in. It's practically a huge vault holding down a spring, so to speak. However, if the deadly water keeps rising, a vault won't do shit, to say the least. He also shows us his contingency plan. There's like 50 going on at once now. At least Fontaine's people are trying to help their Archon, not just standing by like every other region. Apparently Rio has literally built a Noah's Ark ordeal. I am not kidding. Then he just sends us to bed. We wake up in the middle of the night to a ruckus. For some reason we run straight to the vault, straight to the danger. The vault explodes, and Rio, being a cryo character, is freezing as much as he can. We run to get his boyfriend Neuv, and he takes over for us. We then go help Farina have a lunch date with the knave, and the knave is calling her useless, which, to be fair, she kind of has a point. She hasn't done anything while the citizens have built an ark. We then escort the knave out because she asked us to, obviously wanting to talk outside of Farina's earshot. Apparently the knave tried to kill Farina in disguise while Farina was just playing with a cat alone at night in the middle of the street to steal her gnosis, which, if you don't know, the gnosis of each element is given to their god, and the Fatui Harbingers are basically the elite team to steal them. I swear, if I was the knave and succeeded, I'd be so embarrassed to tell them how I got it. Oh, you had a huge fight? Oh, you manipulated and bargained it away from the literal god? Yeah, I just took it from a little girl playing alone with a cat. But as she lunged, she realized she had no gnosis, and Farina just fell to the floor sobbing like a normal citizen. There is no fight in her. She can't even use elemental powers. Neuvillette found this out somehow between the 2 seconds of talking to the knave and walking outside, and he just decides to tell us that he's the Hydro Dragon, which, if you don't know, each element has a dragon and a god. The dragons do hold most of the elemental powers, the gods just hold a lot. The gnosis just gives them the power to give citizens they deem worthy some of this power. He still doesn't tell us where the gnosis is, and we dream about Child and the whale in the death water. Act 5, we feel a huge disturbance and go to Navia's little underground town. She has two, this one's the P one, I cannot pronounce it. Apparently, the deadly water flooded a lot of it, and they couldn't get out tons of people. A lot are dead or injured. Which, let me just mention the tonal shift this was. Genshin started out as like a death and blood doesn't exist game. You know, our characters pass out when they are downed, or enemies just spontaneously turn into balls. But it's been slowly ramping up edge factor. And the missing girls case literally jaw to the floor shocked me. That was one of the first times people were dying, and now like a full village just got destroyed. So let's continue. Navia, like I said, was a mobster-like character. She had 2 bodyguards that followed her everywhere, and we the audience loved them as well. Turns out they died in this incident to the water. It has gone down a little bit, so we are recuperating and investigating the prophecy, because it is coming. We go into a domain segment, and as we are crossing a falling bridge, Navia actually falls in the death water. We cut to in her head where a black and white trial is being held by the water spirits on whether she should be let out. We see her bodyguards there, and they help her out because playables can't die. We found 4 stone tablets that actually show the prophecy. We show them to Farina and Mona to get answers, but before that, walk in on Neuvillette and Farina fighting, because apparently he's been following her for a while, and she's been conducting investigations on the prophecy for years, and just won't tell anyone what she knows, let alone what she knows being the Archon. So our playable characters try to force her into a situation where she tells us what's going on. Before that, Mona's investigation leads us to a message of, the things we see may be different than that of what the gods may see. We finally catch Farina in a house about to tell us her secrets, when the house walls fall down and show us we are in the theater stage, then accuse her of being a fraud who is not a god. It's trial time, baby! They even put the deadly water in a bowl on stage to make her touch it. If she was a god, it wouldn't affect her. However, if she was a normal Fontanian, she would disappear, right? Well, wrong. She dips her hand in, scared to death, and nothing seems to be happening. Then Sigewinne walks in to tell us the deadly water to normal water ratio is just enough to make her forehead heat up. Basically sick but not dead, so if she was hard-headed enough, she wouldn't die. So Sigewinne checks on her, and she is sick. So Farina is a Fontanian, not a god. Farina is judged guilty, more specifically worded, the Hydro Archon is sentenced to the death penalty. We find through all of our investigations on the tablets and past Archon quests that Fontanians were born guilty. The prophecy is a punishment for their sins. That original sin being that they are not humans. They are water spirits. The Hydro Archon turned them into humans without consulting the heavenly principles. That in 500 years they'd put their god on trial. And the abyssal whale we saw hanging out with Child in that dream would come to destroy Fontaine. On cue, it busts through the stage with Child. He and Neuve throw it back into its portal, and apparently the portal is a black hole which is going to suck through the earth. Before that though, let's see from Neuve's point of view right before this. He sees Focalor, who's the real Hydro Archon. Apparently the only way to save Fontaine was to trick the heavenly principles themselves. She made a human decoy, basically putting Farina to play for hundreds of years of hardships and fear. Apparently the Oratrice was made to gather enough power to kill the Hydro Archon Focalor, and give total divinity to the Hydro Dragon Neuvillette, and release Farina basically while giving Neuve the power to declare Fontainians not guilty. We also fight the whale and meet Child's master, who is a universe jumper. The whale is her master's pet that just got out, so she says she will clean up after it, whatever that means. And we do the end of the Archon story meet up with everyone mission. The only thing of note that we find out during all of this is the knave had just had the gnosis the whole time, so that's cool. And we get another Neuve Q&A. The story quests were fun. In Siege Wings, we find out that she's committed a similar sin to the Fontainian people and drank a potion that would turn her half-human. Clorin's was a D&D campaign. I didn't care much for Clorin, so I was scared hers was going to bore me to death, but it was actually really fun. Rio's was my favorite. It got really dark, which I liked. He had to kill his foster parents to protect his siblings, which led him to prison, which was actually interesting. I can't stress enough how good Fontaine's story was. The investigation segments reminded me of the early 2000s investigative, like Danganronpa games. The music was so similar to that game, it was a pure nostalgia rush for me. And of course those games had like 20 clues at play at all times, and Fontaine had maybe like 5, but it still stumped me on some parts. I really liked how for once godhood and their dragons is questioned. I know they usually are just dragons, but in Neuve's case he can act as a human. And he holds practically all the power now, why not be a god? Anyway, that's my summary and thoughts on Genshin Impact's Fontaine. Again, I must stress, do not support them. I do not. I'm just talking about a game I'm passionate about. Like, subscribe, comment, whatever you want to do. Goodbye and have a good day.